Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to take a look at Chapter 17 of Doron Dororon. As usual, I'll have a brief spoiler-free section at the front, then I'll give you a break to click away, then we will get into the spoilery section. This is an excellent action chapter. It builds off of the logical character progression that we see in previous chapters. We get to see each of the characters expand. None of the expansion is truly surprising. There is a bit of a surprise in one character dynamic, but it's all in line with shonen manga. The villains get more villainous, the heroes get more heroic. We get to see some of the training they've been doing in the background between chapters. Like I said, it's a really solid action chapter that comes to a fairly satisfying ending. It's a good self-contained chapter within a larger arc. One thing that I did find interesting was how they described power levels. And I'll go into more of that in the spoiler section, but it's something that you don't often see in a shonen battle manga, but it is something you do see in nature. So it's good research on the part of the mangaka. So, that said, that is the full extent of the spoiler-free section. We will now be getting into spoilers, so in order to give you time to click away so your ears don't hear any spoilers, I'm going to tell you to go check out the links below the video to get a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, and Humans Are Weird, We Took a Boat, Monty Python Meets Star Trek, and these short story collections of human absurdity. Also, if you want to see this video on another platform, you can check it out on Rumble, Veoh, BitChute, and Odysee. Alright, now let's get into the spoilers. Our boys Kusanagi and Dora have been training to fight the other Mononoke, which is no surprise. It's no surprise that in the time jump between the previous chapters in this story arc, they have been putting in some training. They were training specifically with that obnoxiously cheerful and otherwise perfect secondary character. I forgot his name. Anyway, can't remember his name, but basically good guy Greg manga style. Never going to be the primary character, well-intentioned, great fighter, just standard backup shonen character. Anyway, Dora and Kusanagi have been training to work to merge their auras when they're fighting, or rather for Dora to share his aura for Kusanagi to share his aura with Dora, who has none. But anyway, it appears that they found an interesting thing. Their aura would not increase linearly. Anyway, imagine if you're filling a jug with water. As you fill the jug, as you pour the water in, the jug gets fuller, and the more water you pour in, the fuller the jug gets. The faster you pour it in, the faster it fills up. That would be linearly. As you pour in water, the level of the water goes up. But it looks like that when Dora and Kusanagi were training, they discovered that as Kusanagi poured his Mononoke aura, or his Mononoke spiritual energy, into Dora, Dora being the vessel, it would reach a certain level and then stay there. Now, this is very interesting because this is what happens with light, and spiritual energy is generally considered to be a form of light in most storytellings. Now, when you have an electron circling an atom, where light comes from is when the electron circling an atom goes from a higher level of energy to a lower level of energy. And this is how it works. If you pour light energy into the atom, like sunlight, the electrons don't just gently float up on a line. They jump from level to level. You pour a certain amount of energy in, the electron jumps up to the first level. But you can pour as much energy in as you want until it reaches the next level. It's not going to move. Or rather, if you pour half the amount of energy it takes for the electron to go from level 1 to level 2, it won't go halfway between them. It'll stay at level 1. You have to pour the entire amount of energy, light energy, into an atom for the electron to jump from level 1 to level 2. And you have to pour in, again, the exact amount of energy for the electron to jump from level 2 to level 3. The electrons in atoms will not jump up a level until you pour the full amount of energy in. You could pour half the amount of energy in a dozen times and the electron's not going to move because you have to pour in all the energy at once. Otherwise, the electron's just going to stay there at the lower state. And light is generated when the electron actually falls back to its previous state. It's releasing that stored energy. Now, this is a very interesting pattern that's not just found with light and electrons, but in many other places in nature. But it's not a commonly known scientific fact unless you've gone to university for a STEM degree. Then you learn it in the general class that introduces you to the concept. I went over this in general biology and general chemistry. But that is what it is. Energy levels do behave like that, especially energy levels associated with light. There's no in between. There's level 1, there's level 2, there's level 3. So again, this is a really good way to stick to the reality of science, but a very subtle way too, because not too many people are going to recognize that for what it is. They'll just see an interesting story quirk. And that's really a lesson to all writers. Think of the realistic restrictions of nature not as chains that are binding you down, but realistic story quirks that you can write around to make your story far, far more interesting. So anyway, they've discovered this. It takes time to pour in enough energy to move from energy state 1 to energy state 2 to energy state 3. They only have 3 energy states at this point, Doron Kusanagi, and they're kind of paralyzed, or they can't move with any speed, or they'll disrupt the energy flow. Because remember, you can't get to the next level unless you pour in all the energy. So whenever they're interrupted, they fall back to the previous energy level and they have to start all over again. So they have a weak point, a time when they're basically charging, when Kusanagi's pouring that energy into Dora, and during this weak point, they need a shield. And that's where cheerful secondary character comes in. Like many characters of his type, overpowered but not main character potential, he has made himself the perfect shield to protect Dora and Kusanagi while they are training. So they've got a 3-person team now. They've got Dora, who's the active muscle, the main character participating partner. You got Kusanagi, who provides the supernatural energy, and you've got cheerful what's his face, good guy Greg. I think I'm going to call him Greg from here on out. Anyway, you've got good guy Greg, manga guy, who's there to be their shield and protect them. And they need this protection because the ogre that they're battling, I'm sorry, it's not an ogre drinking out of a traditional Japanese wine flask. It's just a very ogre-looking Mononoke with the power to transform up after he drinks blood-infused wine. All right. Anyway, you have the Mononoke, powering up, and then gets his butt handed to him by Doron Kusanagi after they've managed to power up. But we see him cut in half, and he seems disturbed by this, but we all know that this is a shonen manga, so we can't count wine-drinking ogre out of the picture yet, because we've all seen supernatural entities come back from far worse than a measly little getting cut in half through the midsection. That's barely a distracting blow for a high-level supernatural being, as we all know. So, will this take him out, or won't it? I think that Doron Dororon's a good enough story that we just don't know. There's real questions in this. He might stay dead. He might pop back to life. We'll see. The physical stamina of these Mononoke does seem to be pretty stable story to story. There are rules. We'll see if he can be, or maybe the spider lady can stitch him back together with her string. It's a real question. Will he stay dead or won't he? This isn't as simplistic a Shonen Jump as you can trust that he'll come back stronger in the next season. But so there's actually real stakes, real questions there, and I really appreciate that. So what do you think? Hit that like and subscribe button. Tell me what you thought of this chapter. I really appreciate your thoughts, and peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. 2 books in a series of human absurdity. Go check out these short story collections. What will our little green friends think of us when we finally do make it to space? Find out the answer in 2 books of human absurdity. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play.